All right, so I've got everything cut out here to make the medium size of the simple drop liner backpack. Side panels for the interior, back panel with the drop pocket for the interior, front panel with the zippered pocket for the interior, and here's the lid with a piece of webbing and the fidlock buckle here. That will be the main closure along with the front pocket panel, front panel, grab handle, zipper, ends to the zippers, and then as well this little piece of extra of this Dyneema sailcloth that I will use some of this Ultra TNT adhesive stuff to reinforce the front panel there. This is the cinch with the pull cord, back panel grab handle. These are the anchor points. Oh, and actually I'm missing 2 pieces of webbing for the straps, so I'll do that before we go to the sewing machines. And then the side panels with the Ultra stretch pocket and the 1-inch webbing, elastic webbing for the top. And then this bottom panel, which is the nylon coated Dyneema. So let's put all this stuff in a box and go start putting it together. All right, so to get started, here's our front pocket panel and our little pieces of scrap for the zipper ends. So go ahead and get these guys attached good side to good side, which on this Dyneema sailcloth, it's kind of hard to tell which side is, they both look the same is what I'm trying to say. All right, so there we go. Now I have my front panel here, and I can go ahead and attach my strap, my main strap here. So I do have a little marker spot there, but I'm just going to attach it like this. And hope. Okay, great. All right, so I've got the bottom of the front strap attached. I'm going to take it over to the bar tacker and put in a bar tack here, just high enough so that a bike light or a little carabiner can slide in there, and then one up here as well, just on the other side of where a grab handle is, and going through this reinforcement piece that I have there. So let's go to the bar tacker. All right, so we're over at the bar tacker now. Go ahead and get things threaded in here, make sure we're centered with our mark there. And line up the bar tack to go right where I basted it down. Send it, and then I'll just do a handle, my hand's worth. Make sure we're still in the middle. And then it's placed, and then I can make sure I'm right in the middle here. There we go. All right, so now I have my front pocket panel here with the grab handle and the rest of the strap for the buckle. Here's where I'd put on a label. I am currently out of labels, so I'm gonna make this one a no logo option, which is an option for you. It's just one of the upgrades that I allow folks to do. And the reason that I charge more for no label option is because I don't really have a advertising or marketing budget, so word of mouth or like real world exposure is kind of how I get all my advertising. So even though it costs more and it's a step less, it's worth a lot to me to have the logo out there so that people can see, oh hey, where's that bag from? So I'll just trim off the excess here because this was just little pieces of scrap that I got from cutting out the pattern. Okay, so I got that trimmed. Now I have my front pocket panel with the zipper attached, and then I have my front inner panel, both with marks at the top. So I'll line those guys up here and just start basting it on. And when I get close to the end, I'll put in a big tuck here, generous tuck, so that there's space on the inside, some three-dimensionality. And I'll show you how I do that tuck when I get to the bottom here. So I'm just basting on this front panel. It's oversized, and what I do now is I fold it over to find center mark there, and then I fold it over so that there's about 1 centimeter showing, because that's where the seam allowance is going to go. And then same on this side, I line it up with the zipper. Get the zipper pull out of the way. Bar tack it on the strap. And then the top, I'll just take it along like that, give it a little bit of a fold over so that the bar tacker has some extra beef. Actually, I'll probably do it down here. Get this under there. Make sure that there's no extra tension or that it's not loose either. Give it a nice little bar tack, and then do the same thing for the other side. So before I feed these guys through the binder, I'm going to attach these little pieces of 1-inch woven elastic in place, just so they don't shift around on me while I'm doing the next part here. And just go around and bind away. Hardest part is going around this radius here for sure. So I'm making sure to really stuff these straps in to this binder. Make sure there's no, gap between the edge of the binding tape and the foam. And the way they make these binder plate attachments is you send them a piece of what you're going to bind, send them your binding tape, and they actually make these binding attachments for that. I didn't have this shape of strap yet, so sometimes I have to touch up, like, oh yeah, I missed a little bit there, so I'll just touch that up real quick and make sure there's no loose binding tape. But other than that, these guys are ready to go into a back panel. So next I'm going to make these little bottom guys for the straps. I call them anchors. People who went to school for this probably know the correct term. But I just fold them, they're like little diamond shapes. I fold them, start stitching, get the webbing in there all the way to the base, and then stitch all the way down, make the turn, and then all the way back up, and then back over. These can be bar tacked. I find that there's really no need to if you're stitching all the way down, because there's just so much surface area and stitching of this webbing going into the seam of the backpack, so pretty burly. Oh, it looks like just barely. So there we go, do the same thing here. Turn the corner, go back up. Try to hit the same stitch line, especially when you got contrast stitching. All right, so now we got our little bottom corners of these guys, and we can get started on basting this piece of foam, which I didn't actually show in the pile of all the stuff that you need to make one of these. And really the walking foot machine is probably better for this task, but actually, what I should have done while I was doing that at the bottom here is just go ahead and get these guys basted on as I'm basting on this whole. It's just a piece of pretty thin foam, but it does give this bag a little bit of rigidity, whereas with the full-featured drop liner, there's some more rigid foam. There's a fiberglass batten in there, and it's all put in after I sew the bag together. But this one, it goes together quicker. So I don't want to sew that thick of foam into a bag to make the construction easier, because then when you flip the bag right side out, it makes it way harder. So there we go. I've got these guys in there. I've got my markers set for where the straps go in, and I'll get these guys ready. And also find my grab handle. Here's my grab handle. So I'll go ahead and get this guy in there as well. And I like to offset the jumps. Mountains, think of them as mountains and valleys or whatever, but just steps up and down. Just try to spread it out so that it's not just going from 0 to 100, as it were. So I'll go over the strap edge here with the binding tape and the foam, and then I'll give this just like a little bit of a half a centimeter or something like that, so that the machine is not having to step up all at once. All right, so there we go. I got the back panel. I can go ahead and thread bottom of these straps through these strap keepers to keep them from being in my way. So there we go. Now we can attach the bottom panel here. This is the bottom panel. This is the nylon, Dyneema nylon sandwich. Go ahead and get it attached here. Nice back tack. Nice back tack. And then I can do the bottom of the front panel as well. Get this attached. Nice back tack all the way across. And another nice back tack. And there we go. We've got the front, the bottom, and the back attached, ready to go. Now let's make the side panels. So here are the two side panels. Here is the ultra stretch pocket with this piece of 1-inch woven elastic. I just go ahead and fold it over. This stuff doesn't fray, so I really don't have to do a double fold, and I find that a double fold kind of stops the fabric from collecting as much, if that makes sense. And I'll make sure to get both sides of this elastic webbing in there now. And then this goes on like that. Now I hate stretchy fabrics and I hate sewing. Well, I don't hate them, I hate sewing them. So the method that I found that works best with this ultra stretch stuff is to just start at the bottom with the non-stretchy fabric on top. Especially this kind of Dyneema sailcloth. This stuff is, it's not sticky, you know, it's not grabbing the machine bed or anything, so you can kind of just go like this with a fabric that doesn't have like a sticky coating on it, grippy. And then there we go, we've got our side pocket basted on here. Ooh, it almost lined up with that seam from the sail. So now we can go ahead and combine our exterior side panel here, and here's where that little bit of seam allowance we put into that front pocket comes in handy. Do a nice back tack at the top, and now I'm just making sure I'm not catching extra layers, a little bit at a time, and then I'll double check, like, sweet, that looks good looking. I'll throw in a back tack at the top of the elastic pocket just to give it a little more extra strength. And then at the bottom, I start going around the curve here. And I want to think about which way seams are going in between panels. So you want to think about the way water is going to run off stuff. So I want this one to be down like this. And you can see my foam is a little bit oversized here. That's fine. I'm going to trim it. Trim's really easy. And the nice thing about doing a drop liner is that you don't need to use a bunch of binding tape for the inside of the bag, and you don't have to make sure that these, you know, my cutting job, cutting stuff by hand, is inherently going to be imperfect compared to putting stuff on a cutting table. And it's okay if there's a little bit of play. So there's one side panel attached. I'll trim all this stuff off, obviously, but doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because it's going on the inside of a bag, and the liner is what's going to be visible. And as long as it's attached well, it's all good. Nice back tack at the top for this other side. Got to think about the zipper pull now. So once you go down the zipper a little bit, get the zipper pull back out of the way. Always checking layers. And going slow around curves, you got to be careful not to get any tucks. What's going on here? Whew. Sorry for that jump edit there. I cut myself with a razor blade doing a backpack repair the other day, and just wanged it on this machine, and man, that hurt. I'm glad it didn't open up again, but gotta be really careful when you're using a razor blade, but I find that it's a better seam ripper than most seam rippers. But even when I've been doing it for a while, I still manage to find ways to hurt myself, which is why I have this little Band-Aid on here today. All right, so there we go. We've got the exterior of the bag all sewn together. There's lots of fluff hanging out, but you can kind of see the shape that it's going to take. At least this is the exterior, so let's make the liner now. All right, so first step on the liner is to get my drop pocket, which I've already put the binding tape on, pasted to the back panel. So I'll go ahead and get that down the side, do the turn, add a fold for the three-dimensionality of this pocket, add another fold to the other side so that we got a little bit of symmetry, and then make the turn. Then we can grab our front pocket, just making sure it's the right pattern piece. Yeah, this is the front pocket. Zipper pull already attached. And slap this guy on there. Back tack, flip it over, and get a top stitch going. Get the zipper pull back. And now I can attach this. I just fold it over like this, and then I get it attached to the inside of the front liner panel. There we go. I finally found the words there. I was thinking for a second. Cut that, cut that, cut that. All right, so there we go, making a turn at the end with the zipper. Go down the side, paste it on, and then I'll flip it around and do the other side while adding a little bit of three-dimensionality there. And we're already out of bobbin. Look at that. So now I've got my front panel and bottom panel in one, and then my back panel with the pocket already attached. And go ahead and attach these two to each other. And I have to seam tape this seam before I attach the side panel. So there's a little bit of going back and forth between machines. So I'll go ahead and seam tape this off screen, and I'll come back to put the side panels on. All right, we've got our back, front panels attached, got our seam tape down the middle of it. Now it's time to attach our side panels, do a nice back tack there. And go ahead and go around the curve here. So anytime I'm doing curves, I'm just going a little slower, making the turn, making sure I'm not getting any tucks in there. And I always go back and do a little trim around the edge just to make sure that there's plenty of room for the seam tape to grab on either side of this factory scrap Gore-Tex 3-layer usually. I can see this kind of bluish gray thing on the backside is called tricot, T-R-I-C-O-T. Some kind of French word. Well, now I got that panel on there. I can go ahead and put the other side panel on the second side, making sure I do a nice back tack at the top, because when I put it through the seam sailing machine, I am putting quite a bit of stress on this seam. And for whatever reason, I always start on the front and go around the bottom and then end up on the back side. Even if that means it looks different going on either side. All right, so I'll go ahead and give this a trim, and then we'll see at the seam sealing machine. All right, now I've got the liner seam taping machine. Here we go. Start feeding it in there and just go all the way around. Of course, I try to make the curves at the bottom as gentle of a radius as possible, because seam sealing machine doesn't like sharp turns, even though it's on a post bed, as you can see here. Yeah, I'd say a little bit harder to use than a sewing machine, maybe. All kinds of cool machines out there. I really like the look of the ultrasonic welders, the newer ones that don't make a horrific sound when you use them. But yeah, those are very expensive and only work for certain materials. But I get this seam sealing tape from a Japanese company. It sticks really well to this Gore-Tex. As you can see, it's got the same texture, so it's got that same treacle lining on it, and it can go a little faster application-wise than the non-breathable tapes or the non-breathable fabrics that I've used before, and also get a lower temperature, so it seems like a win-win. One side on, second side to go. So I can stop at any point by just taking my foot off the pedal, but I prefer to just keep it going if I can. The machine is really good about stopping and starting, but still, if I can just do it in one shot, I'm gonna try. And as I get close to the radius here, I'm just making sure I'm not getting any tucks in there, going around the curves, getting everything in there, seam-wise. And once I'm around the corner, it's a much easier time. And there we go, we've got a seam sealed liner. Do a quick little check, make sure, oh, yep, there's a tiny little gap that I'll touch up, but otherwise it looks good. All right, so to make the cinch, I take this one long rectangle piece, and I take a good side to good side, and I make sure to do a nice back tack at the top here. And then I'll go a little ways, and then I'll fold it in half to find the midpoint. I'll keep my finger there, and then when I get to it, I'll stop, put in a nice back tack, cut it, move it, and I leave maybe a 1.5 centimeter, 1 centimeter gap unstitched, then do a nice back tack on the back side of that, and then go all the way down to the end, and a nice back tack there. So what that leaves me with is space for the end of this pull cord. So I've got just a long length of cord with a knot going through one of these pop locks, and I will take the end that's the non-knotted end, and I'll pass it through that little gap I made there. There we go, it's poking through, pull it all the way through, and then I will just fold this over and start basting it down where the seams meet. This is a ripstop nylon in 70 denier. It's got a silicone coating. So this is one of the fabrics that I do buy new just to make sure that the cinch on all the bags I make matches, and I'm not gonna have any warranty issues by using a bunch of different kite material fabrics or something like that. So just basting around the bottom here, shoving the pull cord in, which is also a Dyneema-like fiber, and it's got little bits of reflective tape in there, which I find really useful. I think, personally, I like these cinches better than a roll top. I feel like roll top is a lot of extra fabric, and this setup that I have here, you know, it's a nice clean finish. It's not a grommet press kind of situation. And if you do pull this tight with this fabric, it gets really closed. And especially with a lid coming over the top of this, I mean, it's just, your stuff is gonna stay dry. So there we go. We've got the cinch ready to be attached to the collar of the backpack. So to make the lid, we've got the exterior, interior piece of webbing and the fidlock buckle. I'll go ahead and stitch down all these three-dimensional pleats, tucks, whatever you want to call them. Again, I didn't go to design school, so I just kind of figured things out going along. So same thing on all four of these spots. Nice back tacks. Yeah, the fun thing about sewing with magnets is that they stick to your machine beds and all kinds of fun stuff with magnets. I mean, magnets are just fun. I always recommend folks get the fidlock buckle upgrade when available. I even prefer it over the fancier Cobra buckles. Cobra buckles are awesome, but they're just kind of heavy and a little overkill for bag making, if you ask me. So same thing on the liner piece. A nice back tack. This machine could use some timing adjustments or something. It's just not being its normal self quite today, but we all have days like that, right, machine? It's all good. So same thing again on this liner. And now I can attach them to each other. I have done one version of this bag where I put in a zipper here and it gives you, I have a really basic brain pocket, lid pocket. Should I offer that as an upgrade? That's up to you, dear viewer. You drop it in the comments if you think I should do as standard or just as an upgrade, a lid zipper. I think for these like small bags, it's not strictly necessary since, you know, they're pretty lightweight, and if you're putting a bunch of weight in the top, it might be a little wonky, but hey, maybe some people have no issue with that and they just like the extra pocket on the outside, the extra zipper access pocket. All right, so there we go. I've got the exterior attached, basted down to the interior. Now I can go ahead and find my buckle here. Just gonna double check. Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure we weren't out of bobbin again. Put that in. So I've got my lid here, got my fidlock buckle. I know I want it to end up like that, so I find my midpoint, which is pretty convenient on this pattern. And I'll just baste it down, because we're gonna go and bind the whole thing and fold it back over. So let's go over to the binder. All right, so I've got my lid, I've got the binder, and I'm just gonna go around the exterior, everywhere except where it's gonna go into a seam. There we go, binding tape applied. All right, so next I've got my lid. I've got my exterior assembly so far here. Next thing is the lid is gonna go on. So it goes on the back panel, quite obviously. And I'll just go ahead and baste it on here. So by the end of the day, these straps and this grab handle I've gotten stitched onto this fabric 4 times, and then a row of binding tape around it at the end. So very burly straps to be sure. All right, so lid is on now. Yep, that looks correct. Then I will grab my cinch. Okay, so now I got my cinch here and I find my seam, match it up on the inside to where my middle mark was on this front panel without getting my giant head in the shot here, hopefully. and just start going around. Get a couple of stitches in, and then I can start moving it around here. So just go around the whole circumference of the opening here, making sure to not get tucks. Having foam in the back panel already at this point does make this whole process harder, but I think for this bag it doesn't need to be that thick of foam, doesn't need to be that heavy, and it's worth it for not having to sew in a pocket access kind of panel like there is on the regular drop liner backpack. Always checking layers, always making sure I'm not catching something that I don't want to catch, and that I am catching what I do want to catch. And ideally I'm going further towards the outside by a sconch than the basting stitch, so that you don't see that basting stitch ever. Especially if it's a different color thread. All right, there we go. We've got the exterior attached to the interior. We've got the lid put on. We've got the cinch put on. Now I just need to trim all this webbing stuff and put some binding tape on it. All right, now I'm at the binding station. Let's get this snipped so that we can start here on the inside. And if there's any little fluffs, again, get them out of the way. Get it loaded here. Drop the foot, hold the thread, and start going around. So with this hand, I'm just making sure that there's nothing I'm catching that I don't want to catch. It's easier than flipping it every 5 seconds and checking. And the goal here is to go over the seam so that this is the furthest out, furthest to the exterior, if that makes sense. So there we go, our last seam over the straps, the grab handle, the lid, really making sure everything is in there. All right, I'm gonna put some bar tacks in the bottom of the straps after I hot knife the end of this webbing, and we'll be pretty much good to go. All right, so I got that little end of the binding tape hot knifed, and I can flip it right side up. Make sure everything is turned out all the way around, and then I can bar tack the ends of these guys, make a sternum strap, and the last thing is to stitch down this little buckle there so that it stays facing out. All right, so there we go. That's how these simple drop liner backpacks go together. This is the easier one of the drop liner backpack line. Big pocket on the side here, grab handle, fiddle lock buckle, cinch top, seam sealed. So a lot of the same features that you'll find in the full drop liner backpack, but just, you know, no lumbar pad, no hip belt compatibility. The straps are a little thinner, and you know, you can do a side access laptop and stuff like that on the full featured one. Not yet on this one. This one I used the neon green Dry Suit Factory scrap Gore-Tex. And yeah, standard drop pocket on the back side here, zippered pocket on the inside of the front panel, and then a standard ultra stretch pocket on the side for water bottle. So that's about it for Let's Make a Simple Drop Liner Backpack. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like, it really does help. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you for the next edition of Let's Make Something Else.